And my name's Harry Brown. I work with an organization called New Generations. If you're interested, you can check us out at newgenerations.org. So I wanted to talk just for a few minutes about the Great Commission and the role of movements within the Great Commission. So when we talk about a movement in our ministry, we define it as at least 100 new churches that have multiplied to at least 4 generations of churches planting churches. So that's the end goal. But how do you get there? You get there through a process of a chain reaction of disciples making disciples that then results in these cascades of churches planting churches. So now, take that back into the biblical context, and what do you see? Jesus is leaving the earth and giving this great commission that crescendos, that make disciples and teach them to obey. That's the pinnacle. Who's he talking to? He's talking to 11 disenfranchised, homogeneous Jewish guys who don't have anything that distinguishes them. They are not sophisticated, don't have any money, they don't have any leader, they don't have any standing. They're hated by the Jews, they're hated by the Romans, basically kicked around. How are these Jewish guys going to get to everywhere? Well, here's the way it works. Everybody's connected to somebody. So as you read the story of Scripture throughout Acts, you look for things like this. All of a sudden the gospel is in Herod's household. What? Herod, that's Jewish royalty. How did that happen? Somebody knew somebody. Then you hear it's in Caesar's household. That's pagan Roman royalty, and it has global impact to it. Then you hear that the gospel has gotten into the Praetorian Guard. That's military elite. Then you hear that it's gone to all these various cities that have idol-worshiping centers like Ephesus and Corinth, but they're also mercantile centers where people get together for business reasons. Then you hear it goes throughout all Asia. Then you hear the world turned upside down. How does that stuff happen? Well, the way it happens is everybody knows somebody. So as they intersect and the gospel transfers from one to the other, then we see that the Great Commission can actually practically be completed, and it can get to every segment of society. You look at who the lost are. Just think about it for a second. There are 7 billion people in the world. They tell us that there's about 2 billion Christians. I think there's closer to 1 billion, but we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. So if there's 2 billion Christians, there's at least 5 billion people who are lost. What do they look like? Well, they look different because they're extremely diverse. Where are they? Well, they're everywhere because they're extremely dispersed. And guess what? They're also very difficult. Because if it was easy, it'd already be done. So what do you have here? You've got diverse, dispersed, and difficult. How is that going to happen in any practical kind of way? Well, everybody knows somebody you don't. If you got the real stuff and you give it to them and encourage them to pass it on, what you get are these chain reactions that can go viral. And if you took 100 followers of Jesus, now follower means someone who obeys, and you said, okay, will you guys make 1 disciple in 1 year? And they all did it. And they got those people to do the same thing next year. How long would it take you to get from 100 followers of Jesus to 7 billion? Well, work it out sometime. You'll find, almost amazingly, it takes 26 years. That's basically a generation. So if everybody was faithful, even from a small starting point, in 1 generation we could see the job done. What is all that pointing to? It's pointing to you, and it's pointing to me. You know why? Because the game-changing impact on the Great Commission can only come through one source. That's Joe and Sally Smith, ordinary people just like you, just like me. Because as long as it's somebody else's job, it's never going to get done. And actually, I was spiritually born with a genetic defect, and that defect was it's somebody else's job. My job was introductions. If I made the introduction, the professionals will take over. That's absolutely wrong. What has to happen here is that each of us accepts the responsibility of what Jesus said. Go, make disciples, teach them to obey all that I commanded you. That means that the Great Commission is impossible to complete unless ordinary people are multiplying disciples in their natural networks. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 24 says, run to win. So in that spirit, if Joe and Sally Smith, you and me, ordinary people, are not making disciples in their natural networks, we cannot win. But if all of us, as ordinary people, followers of Jesus who choose to obey and get somebody else to do the same, We cannot lose. And that's what we all need to remember. God has put the pieces in place so we can actually practically get the job done.